If you're after the best RuneScape auras, then you are in the right place. Today's video is going to cover all of the combat auras and also the skilling auras that are kind of the best for your account. Let's jump into the combat auras first. So if you have a ton of loyalty points and you're wanting to get the best auras for your account and to be able to get a little bonus on top of some of the other boosts that you can get in the game, then auras are a great way to do that, and they can increase your damage per second as well as be able to increase your accuracy so you hit more consistently and therefore increase your DPS, dependent on how you kind of view things. You know, some auras are better than others, and of course you can leave your comments in the comment section down below, but today's video will start off with the best and then rank them down to some of the more kind of useful but maybe not as good. So number 1, what is the best aura that you can use as a general PVM related combat aura? Well, it has to be Vampirism, for at least for me, because effectively it deals 5% of the damage that you deal to an opponent gets regen of your health. So it will regen 5% of the damage you deal to your hit points. So for example, if you do 10,000 damage, you will receive 500 hit points back. So it may seem really small, but over time, and if you're targeting kind of in an AoE ability, so for example if you were to do Abyssal Demons and you're just aggroing everything and just dealing damage with something like Corruption Blast, then Vampirism is going to boost your hit points massively. So it scales with the kind of area of effect damage abilities that you can use, and it can be massive for just gaining some health back and allow you to camp some bosses for a hell of a lot longer, or just allow you to camp some bosses, because sometimes without it, it can be a real pain, and it means you're going to have to take things like Blood Necklace Shard, which is probably not as ideal, but you can still take that as well, and you can still run Soul Split at the same time, so you could end up with ridiculous healing capability if you do use that. So the second combat aura that's really useful is Dark Magic, and now this isn't a magic ability, it can be used on any class that you actually want to use it on, and effectively what it does is it will corrupt the opponent. So when it corrupts the opponent, it deals a percentage of your weapon damage, or it will deal a kind of your statistic plus 1 and then times by 15. So, for example, if you are 99 magic, it will add 1 to bring you up to 100 and then times it by 15, meaning that you will deal 1500 damage, because it's 15 times 100, you get my drift. Or it will do 5% of your opponent's total life points. When it actually releases that, it does it in waves, so the first hit will be that maximum hit, so 1500 for example in this case, then the second one will be 80% of 1500, then the third kind of blast that comes up will be 64% of 1500, and then the final one will be 51.2%, and it acts in the exact same way as the Corruption Blast ability that you can pick up, or Corruption Shot that you can get for range. It's the exact same, and basically just increases the DPS you can do. It's really useful for if you're doing bosses or PVM with opponents that have huge amounts of hit points that are just a pain to actually be able to bring them down. And of course this does it pretty AFK, or at least without you having to really focus on anything, it just does it randomly. So this is something that's really, really useful, and I highly recommend you guys actually use it. The next aura that you should actually be picking up is Penance Aura, and this is much like Vampirism to do with how much damage you actually kind of impact on your opponent. So 5% of the damage taken by the enemy will be restored to your prayer points. So for example, like we say, if you do 1,000 damage, you will get 50 prayer points back. So you can see how much this stacks up when you are using this against a lot of people, and can be an alternative to actually having to use any kind of prayer potions or stuff like that when doing PVM, especially Slayer tasks. This is a really great aura, and it is able to be used multiple times a day. It's got a 3-hour cooldown period, so you know it's not that long, and an hour of use, so you can use it it for a full hour. So really, really good for a lot of Slayer tasks. You can probably get 4 Slayer tasks in there in the time that this aura is active, 3 to 4. But it's really, really useful, and it can make some tasks like so much easier with regards to taking less in your inventory, which means you can take a lot more home with you after the Slayer task. There is also a set of auras that can be kind of combined in one, and these are the Berserker, Maniacal, and Reckless auras, and they come in at number 4 within this video. And although they are like super, super good, they can be a little bit complicated for, I guess, newer players that are trying to figure out why they start taking a ton more damage when using these auras. But overall, it's going to help you out massively. And these are kind of auras that the more skilled PVMers will take use of a lot more than maybe someone who does Slayer, because effectively what it does is it will boost the amount of damage output you can deal. So for every 1,000 damage you deal, you will be able to do 1,100 when you activate your Berserker, Maniacal, or Reckless aura. They are all dependent on the class styles. Berserker is melee, Maniacal is magic, and Reckless is range, so you can use any one of those. But the key thing with them is that they will also increase your combat style level. So, for example, your combat style will go up by 10% as well. So you'll get 10% damage output and also 10% combat style level increase. And the only kind of counter to that is that when you do activate it, it will reduce your defense level by 15%. So, for example, if you're at 99 defense, it will bring you down to roughly level 74 defense comparatively. So you'll be taking a lot more damage, but you will be outputting a lot more damage. So these are typically the best aura for kind of using with an overload potion. So if you have overloads, if you have the highest tier, and if you have soul split, you can basically use soul split, then you can use the Berserker aura to gain back some of that hit points that you would have lost, but also now increasing the damage that you're dealing. So it's really, really good for some of the high tier bosses where you're just trying to smash out a load of damage and you're relying upon knowing the mechanics so you can avoid the damage as opposed to actually taking damage consistently. So, for example, if you were doing a Slayer task where you're just basically consistently dealing damage and being bombarded by a ton of mobs, then maybe it wouldn't be the best aura. Maybe you'd be better off just using something else. But ultimately, this is a really, really good combat PVM kind of skill aura. So really, really useful. Then the fifth and final aura on the combat side is the Supreme Accuracy auras. So this includes Brawler, Sharpshooter, and Runic Accuracy. Of course, these are the Supreme versions. The lower tier ones get slowly worse, but of course, as you go through, they cost a ton more loyalty points, so you're going to need hundreds of thousands to be able to get all 3. So choosing the one that you're most likely going to use, the best gear that you have in, then is going to be the one that is actually going to benefit your account the most. So get one of these that you're kind of used to be using, so mage, range, melee, whichever one you usually use, and have the best gear, and it will basically boost your accuracy of your attack. So if you're having trouble just bouncing off of things, then using these auras can improve that and allow you to hit more consistently against opponents. If you are coming up against opponents that you genuinely have no trouble hitting, and there is no likelihood that you're going to do no damage, then there's probably not a lot of point that you're going to be using the accuracy auras. So kind of use them sparingly. They do last for an hour and they do regen in 3 hours. So they're really useful on some of the high tier Slayer mobs and of course bosses. There are, of course, loads of other auras that can be somewhat related to PVM, but we're not going to get into all of them because sometimes they're just not really that much use unless in specific situations, and they're not really increasing your DPS or the amount of damage that you're dealing. Of course, I'm sure some of you may have a difference in opinion. Maybe you enjoy using the Supreme Reverence aura, which slows down your prayer drain, or maybe you also like things like Supreme Dedicated Slayer aura, which gives you a 10% chance that your Slayer task will not be reduced. Regardless, it's time to now move into some of the skilling auras that you can use instead. So here are some useful skilling auras. Now they're not usually as good as going for the PVM one, so if you don't have the PVM ones first, make sure you get those because they're more important than some of the skilling ones. They're typically not as good. But for skilling auras, the first one we have is the resourceful aura, and this is going to allow you to have a 10% chance to not deplete a resource when woodcutting or excavating, so you can basically just sit there AFKing for a little bit longer. You also get a 2% chance of getting a geode when mining, so it's an additional 2%. And you get 10% chance to give an additional red/crystal flex sandstone, which does not contribute towards the daily limit. So that's really, really good. The limit is, of course, kind of set there, so you can basically farm some more money and get some extra mining XP, although that's kind of the latter of the list. It's more about actually getting more, so you can create more flasks if you wanted to. But other than that, what other auras are there? Well, you have the Green Fingers aura, and the Green Fingers aura is actually really, really useful to be able to increase the amount of the chance of actually getting diseased. So no crops will be able to get diseased when using it, but it also increases the chance of getting more kind of crop yield. So effectively what you're getting is more crops from every single like seed or whatever you've used. So for example, if you're using bloodweed seeds and you're in the wilderness and you're farming bloodweed, then you're going to be able to use the Green Fingers aura and get 3% increased chance of getting more bloodweed actual from the crop itself. So it's really, really good. And it's going to allow you to get a ton more GP an hour and save you some time and get you more XP at the same time. So it's a really useful skilling aura. And of course, no one likes going around and doing herb runs. So as long as you can get more from less, then that's good with me. The next kind of useful one is just to increase the amount of XP that you're going to be getting when doing woodcutting, and that is the Lumberjack aura. It's super cheap to be able to get, and it will increase your chance of chopping wood by 3%. So it's definitely good, and that's the base version. As you go through, you can get Greater Lumberjack aura, which gives you 5%, and that's the same with the Green Fingers as well. So as you go through, you can just basically get more and more chance of getting kind of wood at the same time. So of course, if you do that, you're going to basically get more XP and you'll get more of the material, which you can then bank or do whatever you want with it. Hopefully you guys will leave your own comments as to which skilling auras you like as well. But other than that, there's also the Divination aura, and that gives you the enrichment. And that will basically increase your chance of getting an enriched memory by 10%. So yet again, it's just going to increase the amount of XP that you're going to make. Same with things like the thieving. So 5-finger discount, you'll basically get 10% more thieving XP because it just increases your chance of thieving. Same with the flameproof aura, you're going to reduce the chance of burning food, so by 10%, probably less useful. So it's one of those that you stick right at the bottom of the skilling list. But hopefully that gave you a good idea as to some of the better ones that you can have in RuneScape as far as auras. And of course, that is not the most comprehensive guide to all of the auras. It's just to talk about the best ones that you can pick yourself. And of course, the last one that we haven't yet talked about that doesn't really fall into any real category is, of course, the Jack of all trades aura, which effectively means that you can get a ton of XP in one skill. All you have to do is you have to go through and you have to gain XP in different kind of skills. The more skills that you complete, so the first aura will give you XP in 10 different skills, and you have to do that within 3 hours, and then you get a bonus XP reward. You can then pick which skill that you want to put that into. So this is really, really big for if you want to put it into some of the really slow skills, things like agility. And if you do it every day, which you can do, it is a once a day thing, so you can only do it once. But as you go through, you'll be able to just basically use this to get a ton of XP. And if you can do it continuously, and if you've got the legendary Jack of Trades aura and you gain XP in 25 different skills within 3 hours, which is really, really easy, all you have to do is get 1 XP drop in all of them. So as in 1 XP, not like 1 drop of XP. So you can do anything to do with all of them. So long as you do all of them, you're going to be able to get an XP reward. And this can be about 20,000 at level 90. It scales with your level. So other than that, I hope this video did give you a good indication of all of the best auras in RuneScape. And of course, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And I hope you join me back in the next RuneScape video coming soon. Goodbye.